God damn it.
Welcome
to Caleb Can't Read. I'm Jordan Rabel.
I'm Caleb Terrence.
Are you hoping to just redo it over and over again until we just get broken down?
Yeah, absolutely.
Stop.
Yeah. I mean, if you had like a decent segue prepared, like I'm going to ask you for every time when you don't, then it would be fine.
How do you feel about stealing from churches?
Like candles for skateboard wax? Absolutely. 100%. Or just, because
do they still use candles in like modern churches today?
I'm assuming so.
I don't know.
What do you think they're updating the tech on their ritual weird shit? No, yeah, they still have candles.
They don't use candles in
No,
rituals.
they got the little glass candle things with the images on them, and you go in because they're unlocked, and you grab the candle, and then you leave, and then you find a curb, and then you rub the wax all over it after you break the glass. It's the whole thing. Yeah.
No.
Oh. Okay.
Well, religion has always been a source of
like
profit.
I stole from the church thing. Look at me.
Let's get started, shall we?
Okay.
Religion has always been a source of profit. And no, I'm not talking about the televangelists of today and all their mega churches. What I mean is actual biblical treasure. Now, the Vikings discovered England sometime in the 8th century AD, but they never found the trip worth it until they learned how to make their ships sturdier for a better chance to survive the journey and bigger to hold more treasure. During the 11th century's Norman conquest of England, a large target for most of the invading armies were churches. They typically went unguarded because any good Christian in England knew not to touch God's share of the profits lest they be damned. But to the Normans, who gives a shit? It's not their God. Now the churches the Normans raided weren't just Christian ones. A lot of them were actually pagan and Celtic too. And although this little skirmish by the Vikings lasted only a few months in the year 1066 AD, the resulting destruction drastically dropped the number of active churches throughout England.
Vikings needed skateboard wax.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because why rebuild where the old one stood when you could just migrate to the next nearest church instead? About 400 years later, between 1536 and 1541, King Henry VIII of England noticed all these hoards of wealth in these remaining churches, just like the Normans before him. So he passed what was called the Suppression of Religious Houses Act of 1535 and 1539.
The what? One more time.
Suppression of Religious Houses Act, which saw to the closure of well over 500 monasteries throughout England, Ireland, and Wales. This was also the treasure would have nowhere else to go but into his own pockets to help finance his ever-growing list of wars.
So, like, how many per capita? Was it like fucking like Portland where they had one every block where it, like 500 closing wouldn't be that big of a deal?
Well,
or was it like...
Yeah, a little bit.
Or was it like every town had a church and now they
Well, every town for sure had some sort of like church, smaller end. But I mean, like the bigger ones had more churches and more lavish ones, meaning that they'd have bigger, better treasure. So he just took all of that anyway.
I feel like they've been really overpopulating everything.
Who?
No, just churches in general.
Yeah.
And then wondering why there aren't like more people in them. It's like, because there's one every fucking block and there has been for like 1,000 fucking years or so. What the shit?
Yeah,
like,
you go out to like my mom's hometown and the two buildings that have for sure seen the most like monetary value pumped into it is the church and the liquor store. Everyone else is in a trailer.
Yeah, because it's one church, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
there it is.
It's huge for being like, I don't know, 100 people. And in case you didn't notice, King Henry VIII was very famously not a friend of religion. In fact, because he was Catholic and couldn't divorce his wife under rule of the church, he created the Church of England just so he could.
Oh, yeah, that's the guy.
That's the guy. And this new ransacking of churches, whether they were Catholic or not, was part of his lifelong fight with the fucking Pope. Which has got to be weird to not just be on a first name basis with the Pope, but also just like having like little MySpace spats too. Just being real like, hey, why do you drop me from your top 8? Like,
I don't know, it's kind of a weird way to bring up the Pope in this scenario. Like, this guy's any better. Like,
no, I'm not. Trust me, it's hard to pick sides when they're both pieces of shit.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Suck, like.
They hate each other though. Well, anyway, while all the solid gold treasures from the monasteries could withstand the rough handling as they were carted over several miles, and the stone walls could withstand the fires set by the king's men after their looting, what ultimately didn't survive the long treks or the fires were the manuscripts housed within the monasteries themselves. And here's the thing. Monasteries didn't just house Bibles. No, they held everything from tax records to poetry. Because back then, they were like the Library of Congress. They held onto whatever they could for public record. Monks and priests knew the importance of documents surviving the times. Documents were specifically held in monasteries because of the stone walls, so they'd be protected by fire. It's just that no one ever... Well, they were inside, like, by the fire. That would be outside the walls. It's just that no one ever figured their own king was going to come in and be like, hey, it's us, give us your gold, and then set fire to the inside, please. You know, like, they just were like, the stones will save these documents.
Didn't we go over this recently, like the burning of old records whenever there's a new ruler thing?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You could listen back to that episode on book burning.
On wherever fine podcasts are sold.
I wish we made money on this.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Bangladesh.
Fill our pockets, our coifers, Bangladesh.
For fuck's sake, subscribe, though. Jesus, they don't track just the listens. It's a fucking nightmare. Damn.
So between the years of 1536 and 1541, the news about what the king was doing quickly got around, and the monks hid what they could. Unfortunately, a majority of these documents were indeed set aflame, and as a result, we have almost nothing when it comes to ancient English documents today. However, of the many examples of Old English texts that still survive, there are what is called the 4 Old English poetic codices. Codices is plural for a codex, by the way.
I know. Yes, I've played 40K.
Wow, you actually ran into that word sooner than I did then, because I never heard code. Okay, all right.
I'm going to find a reference in at least one episode from here forward.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
These are 4 large volumes of collected work that survived the sieges and hold some of the greatest examples of Old English literature. The first one, called the Vercelli Book, was discovered in the Capitulary Library of Vercelli, Italy, in 1822 by a man named Frederick Bloom. It was believed to have been taken by an Italian cardinal named Guala Bicchieri, Italian, man, back in the 1200s for unknown reasons. The most probable is that he was just a bastard. But either way, the Vercelli Book, besides
bastard in the literal sense, or bastard?
No, he just stole a fucking old book. Like he just stole it, just lifted it,
it's like,
and fucking brought it back.
We're like old timey right now. It could have gone either way.
Yeah,
you know?
he probably was a bastard in the literal sense too. I mean, weren't they all?
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
But really, either way, the Vercelli Book, besides holding a couple of poems from 9th century English poet Cynewulf, really has just a mishmash of random shit in it that basically seemed like it was this monastery's like miscellaneous folder. Still, it is one of the 4. Another of the 4 Old English poetic codices is the Exeter Book, or the Codex Exoniensis. Fuck, God, Jesus Christ, dude. It's going to be a rough one.
Want to give it another try?
The Codex Exoniensis.
Come on.
Exoniensis.
Wait, let me see.
This is it.
Highlight it. Let me see.
Codex Exoniensis.
No, that's it. Codex
Exoniensis.
Damn, it's fucked up.
Right? It's stupid.
Codex Exoniensis.
Just call it Codex Phil, for fuck's sake. Like, just name it something good and wholesome and American.
Codex Spam.
Codex Light. This is the largest of the collections, actually holding 1/6 of all English poetry before the 10th century. And great as that is, I won't say too much about it because it's not the subject of today's episode. The Codex Exoniensis is so large, it would take its own fucking series to go over. But either way, the short history of it is this. A bishop named Leofric was King Edward the Confessor's right-hand man in the time of the mid-11th century.
Can you hear the laundry machine on your headphones or no?
Maybe.
Oh, man.
Fuck him.
Whatever. No, we're responsible. We do our laundry here.
we do our own shit. It's fine. Leofric was King Edward the Confessor's right-hand man, and was rewarded with just a bunch of shit for being so. Just whatever they plundered, he got a half of it or so. One of these rewards was the Exeter Book, which he kept in Exeter Cathedral in southwest England. But for some reason, although the Exeter Cathedral was ransacked by King Henry VIII's men, didn't suffer too much damage for some reason. In 2016, UNESCO called the Exeter Book, quote, the foundation volume of English literature, one of the world's principal cultural artifacts. The third of the four codices, the Junius manuscript, named after Franciscus Junius, who was the first to transcribe the documents, contains poems of the Bible, filled with dope-ass medieval drawings, among which is a poem called Christ and Satan, describing the fall of the great beast 666. Luckily, the manuscript was given to Oxford University sometime during Junius's lifetime, so it went untouched during King Henry VIII's looting of churches.
Oh, shit, that reminds me.
Huh.
Fuck. Let's pause.
Go ahead and explain what that reminded you to do.
Oh, that reminded me to ask time off for work so I could go see Uncle Acid and the Deadbeats.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad I was there for you.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
And there actually were a number of abbeys and friaries in the town of Oxford back then, but luckily, with all the attention focused on those, the manuscript remained safe in the university library. But out of all these books, the one that we'll be looking at today is the Noel Codex. Now, the book itself was originally two different books, but at some point were glued end on end to create one larger one. We're not quite sure when this happened, but it was probably sometime in the 1500s, after the second half of the book left the hands of its original owner, Lawrence Noel. As a matter of fact, that's why it's called the Noel Codex, because he wrote his fucking name in the second half of the book like a goddamn child. Now, what we know about Lawrence Noel is very limited, but what we know is that he was born sometime around 1530 in Lancashire, England. He was taught at the Westminster School under the tutelage of his cousin, Alexander Noel, who is himself remembered today as the first man to bottle beer. In his adult years, Lawrence Noel went country hopping for many, many years with his friend William Lombard, collecting ancient manuscripts wherever they could find them. Because back then they had no real worth to anyone besides the monks looking to preserve history, so there were plenty of merchants just selling pages of old bullshit to whoever wanted them. Well, when Lawrence Noel died sometime in the 1570s, it was his old friend William Lombard who inherited the manuscripts he collected during that time. Now, supposedly, Noel and Lombard got their collection of manuscripts from just one source on their cross-continent trip rather than several. We think this because handwriting shows that the entirety of the second half of the Noel Codex is written by only two people. The first guy stopped in the middle of a sentence where the second guy picked it up. Maybe he just fucking died of, like, dysentery or diarrhea or something.
Tetanus? I don't fucking know.
Tetanus. One of those old diseases people don't get anymore.
Yeah.
Since then, the Noel Codex has passed hands through William Lombard and was greatly misused through its many ownerships, until it came to a man named Sir Robert Cotton. Cotton had one of the largest private book collections ever amassed, and a big portion of these books were original works from the days of antiquity. But on October 23rd, 1731, a fire broke out, and up to a quarter of all of his books were either damaged or destroyed. One in particular that was badly damaged was the Noel Codex, with bad singeing on the edges of the pages. But even then, the restoration for the Codex took at least another 70 years to commence, meaning that the damage only got worse over that time. They just didn't fucking bother.
Yeah,
they just reshelved it.
There's no fucking way any work was done.
Yeah, the flaking edges became brittle and could have been transferred to other pages had it been done in time, but because the work was neglected for so long, the words on these pages are now forever lost. Ironically, as much as this Sir Robert Cotton guy loved collecting old texts, he didn't actually know what was in the Noel Codex at all. Pretty much just leafed through the pages and was like, neat, and kept it shelved with the rest of his collection. Well, it wasn't until 1786 that someone decided to transcribe the pages in the Codex to another piece of paper. So if this shit happened again, it wouldn't be lost forever. Oddly, one poem in particular was in another language, but someone, recognizing it as an old dialect of Icelandic, alerted some scholars working with the Dutch government. The Dutch government at this time was actually very interested in getting their hands on whatever they could to preserve their own history, so sending a delegate named Grimmar Johnson Thorkelen to the Cotton estate, they attempted to at least get a copy of this poem, which they allowed. While transcribing the verses into Latin, Thorkelen brought with him another delegate, one from the British Museum, a man named James Matthews. He was instructed to also copy down the poem into Latin, so there would be two copies instead of one, just in case.
Man, you give me too many goddamn details about this shit.
It's just for history.
Just for history's sake?
This is all background to, none of this matters even, so Don't worry about it.
Okay, all right, cool. This fucking build-up better be worth it.
Well, it turns out this was the right call. You see, Thorkelin lived in Copenhagen, and during the Battle of Copenhagen in 1807, his fucking house burned down. 20 years of work down the shitter. But he was able to make handwritten copies of the transcript made by James Matthews and fully published the tale into Latin in 1815. But it wasn't until 1837 that the poem was finally transcribed into English. The most famous part of the Noel Codex and one of the oldest Viking legends ever told, and the subject of today's episode, Beowulf.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the one with Angelina Jolie and the stupid fucking CGI dragon.
We'll get to that.
Fuck, that shit sucked ass.
It was real bad. I remember watching it all, like, at this point, sadly, decades ago, and being like,
Was it? It's fucking, like 1 decade. Come on,
no,
man.
it's not from the teens.
It's not
It's
decades.
not. Let me flip to
Over a decade, not decades. Come on, man. You're hurting.
You don't think it's
You're hurting
from, like,
me.
2002 or something?
I'm not ready for this.
All right, I'll get to it later.
I'm not 30 like you, okay?
But I just shut up. I just remember at 31. I just remember it sucking real bad when I first watched it, and as I'm doing the research for this,
you remembered it sucking real bad at 31 when you first watched it.
Shush. And when I was like 13 or something, who knows? Yeah. And I'm just like, man, is it real?
I was like 15 when it came out, so that would have made you like 24.
I don't know. I guess. What?
Yeah.
No. What? Fuck you. No, I'm not that motherfucker. I got like 2 years on you.
Anyway,
it opens thus. So,
man, we got to work on our transitions. Shit's like rough. Like bits just like end. And we have no follow through, and then you just kind of go.
You mean like a real conversation, unscripted, like we're having? That's just how it is. I hate how they sound so natural because it's natural.
Like it's just that weird improvisational tone
of just trying to laugh through the awkwardness. Yeah. Quote, so, the spear Danes and days gone by, and the kings who ruled them, had courage and greatness. We have heard of those princes' heroic campaigns. The tale begins with a little history of where most of the story takes place. Long ago, the great king of the Danes, Shield Sheafson, was found as a baby, adrift on the waters and abandoned. He was raised by the village that found him to become a great and powerful king. When Shield Sheafson passed away, he was given a burial at sea, his body placed on a boat with great treasures, his tale ending much like it began, on the water. Now Shield Sheafson's son, Beo, ruled after him, and when he passed, his son Halfdane took over, and from him, Hrothgar. Now Hrothgar's rule was much like his great-grandfather's, Shield Sheafson. The land grew in military might, the kingdom was at peace, and Hrothgar became a well-respected king. In celebration of the kingdom's harmony, Hrothgar constructs a great mead hall to be used by all. Now, you know Cain from, like, Cain and Abel, right? Yeah. Well, it turns out that a demon named Grendel, who lives in the marshlands near the mead hall, is a direct descendant of the malevolent Cain. And Grendel would often...
I thought the Beowulf thing was like a whole Norse.
It is Norse. There's a bit of mixture here.
Why is there like a Oh, okay.
We'll get to that as well.
So
but
it's like so we're doing like a fanfic.
No, well, I mean, aren't all
we're doing like a crossover?
So
we're doing a crossover Norse mythology Christian.
I just read the
thing
completely
right
wrong fucking
book.
Beowulf. Yeah, I just read the completely wrong fucking book, and just like, wait a second, this says that it was written by Suckle Kitten 69.
So a descendant of a different mythology is there fucking with him, and we're reading the plot of the next God of War.
Yeah, but yeah, kind of basically. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right.
And Grendel would often lurk just outside this great mead hall that Hrothgar had constructed, and listen to all the parties he wasn't invited to.
Why didn't they invite him?
He's ugly. I don't know.
Wait, so they knew about him?
Yeah, he's like part demon though.
Wait, they knew about Grendel?
I think so.
Did they?
Well, okay.
Because anytime I've seen this represented anywhere, it's like, what the fuck is that? Oh my fucking god! Oh shit! And then he like bursts in the meat hall. And it's a whole thing, and he's got a big beefy arm, and then the door slams, and the whole fucking we all know the Grendel shit.
Yeah. Well,
but it's a surprise. They're not just like, oh, it's Grendel, dude, that we didn't invite because he's a weeb.
Well, here's the thing: we actually don't know because the way that stories were written back then, no context was ever given. It's literally the action, the next action, the next action. No backstory.
Okay.
We have no idea.
Okay.
I would assume that they didn't know about him, though.
Well,
I don't know. Well, we will decide.
So if they don't know about him, then Grendel's 100% a dick. If they did know about him, then fuck them.
Well, but fuck them. They're still Vikings. What do you, like... Why didn't they invite me to their birthday party? Because they're Vikings and they don't have birthdays. They were just bread of the earth. Oh.
Well, no, I mean, no. They're not Vikings. They're just Scandinavians. That's different. That's like calling all of them Vikings is like calling all of us Marines, bro. It's not.
Fuck yeah, brother.
It doesn't make any sense.
Time to get a shamrock tattoo and divorce my wife. Woo! I'm a Marine.
Time to die of alcoholism under a bridge.
I can't be around fireworks.
I'm sorry to any of my friends that listen to that. But yeah, no, it's on that level. They're not all Vikings. They're just Scandinavian. It's not a thing.
I can't wait to sit at the back of the class so that my back is to the wall and I can't drive over fucking potholes anymore. That one's a bit more real.
I didn't like it. I mean, go on. What we got? Stop calling them Vikings. They're not Vikings.
Well, one night, Grendel hears the people inside the mead hall sing a song praising the Christian god, which angers Grendel so. Later that night, when the townspeople inside the mead hall are all drunk and fast asleep, Grendel rages in and kills 30 men, some of which he fucking eats, and nothing can stop him. Swords and arrows just seem to bounce off the guy. So Hrothgar and his men abandon the mead hall. Since then, Grendel's attacks have become an on-again, off-again occurrence in Hrothgar's kingdom for over the next 12 years. Now, in a nearby kingdom called Geatland, is a warrior named Beowulf. And word gets around to him of the terrible and fearsome Grendel. Beowulf gets permission from his king, his uncle, and with a crew of 14 men, Beowulf offers Hrothgar his assistance. Turns out, Hrothgar was a friend of Beowulf's dad and gladly accepts his helps.
Go on, start over. It's okay. Smack your lips, get back to it. Come on. There we go.
I lost my place. That night, Beowulf and his crew go to the mead hall where they feast with Hrothgar and some of his men. They got to make it look natural to Grendel, you know? And during the meal, one of Hrothgar's men, a guy named Unferth, says he isn't convinced of Beowulf's merit, says that he knows Beowulf through a friend of his, and his friend says that instead of completing a swimming match with him, Beowulf saw he was going to lose and just fucking gave up. And Beowulf says, nuh-uh. What happened, he says, was that he actually got pulled under the water by sea monsters, and he faced all of them head on head, like in one big battle, and it lasted several days before he eventually wound up on the coast of Finland. And unfortunately, Unferth is not totally convinced of this. So after
yeah.
Why couldn't they hurt you, Beowulf? For my force field was too mighty. So after the feast, Hrothgar, Beowulf, and all their men pretend to fall asleep in the mead hall, trying to lure in the beast. That has to be the dumbest scene ever. Just, quick, men. Me. Man, I remember, you've tried to pretend to fall asleep as a kid before, right? Like,
I mean, I would just lay still because I wasn't a fucking dumbass. Like,
no, I just remember, I
can still tell, though.
One time, I won, and but it was because I was scared shitless. I had my parents said goodnight to me.
Get dark?
No, not really. I was
okay.
Don't act awake.
30-year-old man talking about his childhood. Not looking good, not looking bright. What do we got going on? Go on,
so
brother.
I would wait for the sound of my parents to go to bed or something, hear their door close.
Yeah.
I clicked on my little table side light and I was just reading something.
Nice.
I don't know
Time
what.
to touch my penis.
Yeah.
Well,
and so and I'm staying up and I'm reading for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's way late at night. I wonder why I had insomnia problems at such a young age. So I'm reading and I hear the door somehow slam open. Like, clearly the light crept under my door into their bedroom, and my dad could see it at, like, fucking midnight, and there's school tomorrow.
Yeah, is it because you're a dumbass kid?
So
you don't understand how obvious what you're doing
rips open the door. I hear the thunk, 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 and I quickly just, like, I know that he sees the light, and I quickly just, like, put the book on my chest, and I, like, lay my head to the side, and I just, like, open mouth, and my dad just slams open the door, and he looks at me, and then he very softly comes over, and he just, like, picks up the book, like turns off the light. And the only reason I didn't like smirk or laugh or anything like that was because I was in fear of my fucking life.
Yeah.
Had I like 100%. Just been like, it just like smack.
Dude. Yeah, no. Because Jesus fucking
I didn't mean
Christ.
to like restart.
Can you
some
fucking
PTSD
imagine like I mean us, like we don't have fucking kids. Like imagine like how done with like you've had a roommates. Imagine how like done you've been with roommate shit. Imagine if you had the kind of control over your roommates as your parents do over like you.
I guess I could.
Like,
I could have just hid their drugs, you know, and just been like, give me my fucking LSD, man. Not until you do the dishes.
It's a very different Lord of the Flies dynamic here. I have your opiates. Okay, maybe an editing point
Do
there.
you feel the shivers, Jeremy? So they're all pretending to be asleep in the mead hall, and lo and behold, Grendel enters. But as soon as he does, the men get up and surround him. Unfortunately, like they'd attempted so many times before, their swords cannot pierce Grendel's skin. But that's not a problem to Beowulf, who for some reason always saw himself and Grendel as equals.
Inside of him.
I can crawl way up inside there. So he, for some reason, sees himself and Grendel as equals. So just to flex, Beowulf grabs Grendel by the arm and rips it off his fucking shoulder. Quote, as long as either lived, he was hateful to the other. The monster's whole body was in pain. A tremendous wound appeared on his shoulder.
Yeah, because his fucking arm was gone. He ripped his arm off. The wound was huge. Yeah, no shit. Fucking arm's gone, man.
Sinews split and the bone lappings burst. Beowulf was granted the glory of winning. Goes without saying, I think. It's a draw. It's a draw. Grendel runs out of the mead hall, too quick for the soldiers to catch. Unbeknownst to them, Grendel finds a nice little hovel in the swamps by town to lay down and die. The next morning, there's a great celebration. Bards are singing the tale of just last night. Unferth, the guy who said Beowulf wasn't all that great.
The bards are all like, man, I've been waiting my whole life for this.
A new fucking song, thank God. So Unferth, the guy who said he wasn't all that great, is proved to just be a stupid bastard because Beowulf now has the arm of a fucking monster he just killed, and the whole town is back in the mead hall to feast without worry.
All those sea monsters, huh?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
I mean, if we're following this, like,
I mean, hey, you know,
I mean, if you rip the fucking thing's arm off,
it's a lucky try. It's luck. Come on.
I've never luckily ripped someone's arm off, man.
It's usually unlucky if you rip someone's arm.
I mean,
I've
unluckily injured people, but
never. You didn't luckily injure people.
No.
Well,
never.
Drink more. Now you're lucky to do it.
Just myself.
I'm so unlucky. Yeah, been there. Now, as mentioned before, the mead hall was a place to sleep as well as to party. It's not what it was necessarily meant for, but it would inevitably happen when you get 200 people fucking wrecked.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it was meant for. What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm just saying, you know, it wasn't.
What do you
for
why
the party?
Did you even say that?
Of
No,
course
it's 100%.
Okay,
like a
I'm
party
sorry.
Like,
so here at the frat house. Okay, whatever. Fuck you.
Here at the party house. Here at the longhouse, which we drink and fuck.
I mean, it's not meant for the fucking, but fucking happened. See where I'm going with this?
They knew damn well.
Well, it's at this point that a chunk of the story revolves around people exchanging tales of miraculous battles that probably did actually happen sometime in Danish history. Like, the tales are, of course, a little embellished because it's poetry, but these battles probably did happen. One story of note is of a great warrior who donned a silver helmet with boars adorning the sides, signifying his terrific strength. Remember that. We are going
to say boars or oars?
Boars. Like pigs.
Like
piggy boys with tusks.
Like they were like They were like etched into the armor? Or like...
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And remember that. We are going to get back to that eventually.
Okay.
Well, Beowulf has been given other amenities there in town by Hrothgar, so he stays in his own hovel while the rest of the town parties on in the mead hall. Later that night, while some of the town is there asleep, a new, more terrifying beast appears. Grendel's mom. She doesn't get a name. It's literally just Grendel's mom.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wait, you're fucking with me.
No, it's Grendel's mother, but I mean, yeah, it's his fucking mom. Oh, dude,
Grendel's
your mom. His mom's here, dude. Oh, fuck.
Yeah. All right.
A scream awakens the rest of the people in the hall, including King Hrothgar, who sees Grendel's mother picking up a friend of his and taking off with both him and Grendel's severed arm from wherever it was displayed. Hrothgar quickly...
I'm taking this dick and this arm.
I'm taking back my son's shit.
The whole dick.
I'm taking back the Nintendo, and his friend's cute, too. Hrothgar quickly goes to Beowulf for help, who compiles a team of men to go with him to save Hrothgar's friend. And since Beowulf showed his might with Grendel, he's got even more guys coming with him this time, one of which is Unferth. Eventually, Beowulf and his crew come to the top of a cliff that overlooks a murky lake crawling with serpents and sea dragons. This is where they'll find her. How do they know? Because the friend of Hrothgar's she took from the mead hall placed his severed head at the top of the cliff, overlooking the lake. She's just taunting them to come get her. And it's here that Unferth trades swords with Beowulf as a gift. He bestows upon him the great sword Hrunting, which has seen many battles and is supposed to have great power. Beowulf, being the boss bitch that he is...
This is dull, though.
What?
It's just seen many battles. Yeah, it's been a fucking minute.
You
like,
didn't
I don't know.
remember to sharpen this or even, like, I don't know, wax it? What happened to all those churches that you fucking... I thought you were stealing wax from churches to fucking make sure this thing is gleaned.
I'm just... It's clearly seen many battles. I'm kind of worried about the,
You didn't wipe off the fucking blood. You realize that's a lot of iron on this, right? Like, this is rust, dude. Well, Beowulf grabs the sword and jumps headfirst into the lake with no support, just making his way past all the creatures after him till he comes to a cavern at the bottom. It's one of those caves that has air in it if you just, like, dive under the water and then come in from underneath. You know how they do in, like, video games and
the
shit.
the whole bit with
the
what
I'm saying.
And
Yeah, there's a canoe there, too.
Yes.
Well, anyway.
That's how we got there.
Grendel's mother pulls him in, ready to fight. Beowulf swings the great sword Hrunting, and it breaks. Grendel's mother throws Beowulf to the ground and stabs him in the chest with a sword. But because of Beowulf's amazing plot-driven armor, he's unharmed. Now in the lair of Grendel's mother, all along the walls are treasures that she's collected from all the knights and soldiers who have tried to kill her. This includes all their weapons. Hanging up on the wall is a sword meant for the slaying of giants. So Beowulf rushes to grab it, pulls it off the wall, and chops off her fucking head. Quote, "So the shieldling's hero, hard-pressed and enraged, took a firm hold of the hilt and swung the blade in an arc, a resolute blow that bit deep into her neckbone and severed it entirely, toppling the doomed house of her flush. She fell to the floor. The sword dripped blood. The swordsman was elated. And erect."
That wasn't... You made that up. You made that last bit up.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, you did.
Prove it.
Okay, cool. Let's pause it. Fucking show me the source.
No, I don't want to. With the battle over, Beowulf explores further into the cave, where in the very back corner he sees Grendel's withered corpse. In a last act of finality, Beowulf chops off his head as well, just for good fucking measure.
Yeah, just to be sure.
You gotta be.
I mean, for fuck's sake, you took the thing's arm, he fucking ran off and died screaming, and then his fucking weird mom came back, you dived into a fucking lake, and then, like, rode up on her with treasure, you got stabbed in the chest, didn't fucking die for some reason, and then cut her head off. Yes, absolutely cut that thing's head off.
I mean, what if her husband shows up and, he's just like...
I don't fucking know.
I don't know who these people are because their heads are gone.
Definitely search the entire fucking cave for family records. Be sure what's going on here. Like, just make sure, like, are we fucking done with this?
No,
like,
this is the part in the movie where he, like, looks at the family tree painting in the background and he sees...
That's a thing?
Grendel's mom is really... Oh my god, he's the sister of Hrothgar. This was all a plot to take over the throne. and then he's got to go and like.
There was a throne?
And he fucking like.
There were guns
him.
too, right?
There were guns.
There were hella guns.
There were hella guns, dude.
All right,
fucking sick.
Yeah, the movie was way better. The CGI fucking shitty early fucking 2000s
Was it Grendel
movie.
Kristen Glover? Kristen
What?
Glover? Crispin Glover.
I have no fucking idea.
Okay,
dude.
I don't know.
I never looked up the IMDb of the shitty Beowulf CGI movie. Forgive me.
Well, so when he cuts off Grendel's head, the blood is so hot it melts Beowulf's blade down to the hilt. The enormous amount of gore from both Grendel and his mother makes its way to the tide pool that Beowulf came from and up to the surface of the lake. From up on the cliff, all the dudes Beowulf brought with him are just watching the water turn red. Hrothgar's men believe it to be Beowulf's, and they return home in defeat.
They're like, that must be Beowulf. He had so much blood. He had so much fucking blood in him, man.
See how
He's
big
the only one that could fill up an entire fucking ocean river thing.
See how big his erection was? There had to be a lot of blood to fill that guy
there.
up.
Dude was full of blood.
Beowulf's own men, however, the men from Geatland, hold out hope until they see a body. And so, they wait. But what if they were wrong? Like, they're not going to see a body.
That's fine. They just fucking... It's fucking back in the day. Like, what? Fucking boo-hoo. We're just going to sit here in this environment we can sustain ourselves in and build houses in and hunt in. Oh, no. Fuck. Goddamn. Like...
We've got this guy's severed head. You guys want to invent soccer? Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. Like, you're good. Like,
well, sure enough, Beowulf makes his way to the surface of the lake with Grendel's head in hand. The lake waters no longer infested with monsters. With the death of the demon known as Grendel's mom, the curse upon its waters are gone. When Beowulf arrives at Hrothgar's palace with both his life and Grendel's head, he's showered with gifts, among which is a better sword, one of Hrothgar's own, called Nagling. When Beowulf returns home to report to his own king, his uncle, Beowulf gifts a portion of his reward to him, and in return, the king gives Beowulf a shitload of land. When the king of Geatland inevitably dies in battle sometime later, Beowulf rules the kingdom in his stead for 50 years. Now, 300 years prior to this story, a wealthy man had learned of a prophecy that his lineage would end with him. Feeling that the earthly treasures he'd amassed meant nothing now since he was destined to die alone, he buried his treasure in a burrow, creating a terrific mound. Eventually, a dragon crawled into this mound and hibernated, protecting the treasure until the present day. Unfortunately, a runaway slave from somewhere happened upon the mound and for some reason just starts digging. What he eventually finds...
It's just a vibe, man.
You just feel it. All slaves feel gold in the ground. We know that. I feel like I shouldn't have said that.
I don't know how I feel about that one, man. Like, it wasn't really funny at all, like, as a joke.
I just need to, I don't know.
I mean, nor was it really that offensive. It was just kind of really like, Matt, wow. Like, it's just something like...
Well, what do you eventually...
Congrats, you fucking hit... pretty solid cringe there.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Well, what he eventually finds is a gem-covered goblet. And of course, he believes he's hit fucking pay dirt. Just some king had a picnic out here years ago and fucking left this thing lying around in the dirt. Later, after this guy is long gone, the dragon wakes up from his slumber to find a piece of his treasure gone. And in a rampage, returns to the countryside every night to burn down the nearby villages and forests, while sleeping again during the day.
Wait, returns to burn the villages?
Yeah, like he just goes back
like
and
they
forth.
rebuild them every day?
Yeah, no. But I mean, like, this shit goes on for a while. Like, he's got to run
every
out of
day,
shit
like,
to burn down. Like,
I mean, how many fucking times can the thing come back? Fucking goddamn it!
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, too, is, like, they make it seem like this shit's gone on for quite a while, too. And it's like, yeah, just, should we build over there in the fire zone? No, we don't build there. Like, but if you do about 500 feet back, dragon doesn't come that far out. You're fine, you know. During one of the dragon's onslaughts, Beowulf's kingdom is targeted, and Beowulf, now an old man, asks God what he's done to deserve this. He receives a vision that this may be his final adventure. But Beowulf will do anything to make sure that doesn't happen. Beowulf gathers some men, and thinking on his days fighting Grendel and his mom, knows that this fight will probably kill him. With the men he's gathered, they together manage to find the thief that took the dragon's goblet. And with the treasure in hand, they go to the opening of the mound where the dragon has made his home. Beowulf tells some tales of his younger days as a soldier and a little history on the wars between Geatland and the Swedes. Everyone knows that this is probably him putting in some final words before his death. But Beowulf says he'll fight the dragon mano a mano, so long as they get the dragon to come out and fight. And getting the dragon to come out of his hole is simple enough. Beowulf just shouts into the entrance for the dragon to come and face him. And he does. I don't think that they said like what he shouted, but I mean, I've got some good guesses.
You can just probably just make noise.
Yo, bitch!
I mean, it's probably just like, a fucking, it's an animal. You just yell.
Just pulls out a squeaker.
And if it's territorial, then it's going to pop out.
I guess. At just the sight of the 50-foot dragon, all of Beowulf's men dip out, all except his most loyal man, Wiglaf. Beowulf charges at the dragon, slapping the great sword nagling against his breast, and his fucking sword breaks too. In retaliation...
Wait, against his own...
No, against the dragon.
I just pictured him posturing, slapping against his chest, and then the sword breaks, and he's like, fuck!
That would be fucking tough as shit. Like, you remember that scene in The Predator with the Native American dude just fucking cuts across his chest?
The Predator?
Predator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, wait, no, there have been several Predators.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's Predator, Predator 2, Predators, and then The Predator. You're right. I never saw The Predator, the PG-13 one. That's fucking stupid. No.
You're talking about Predator.
I'm talking about Predator. You remember the dude who, like, just cuts across... Billy.
Yeah.
Billy. Yeah, he fucking cuts across his chest. Like...
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great if Beowulf tried to do that and just fucking falls off the hilt. Just... Ding! Like, oh, fuck!
Yeah, that's what I pictured. Just... Shit!
In retaliation...
Bare hands, let's go.
I'll tear your fucking arms off! In retaliation, the dragon bites down on Beowulf's neck and won't let go. So Wiglaf runs to the dragon and stabs him in his belly. Distracted, the dragon attempts to burn Wiglaf with a great bellow of fire, but Beowulf uses this opportunity to stab his knife straight into the dragon's heart. Now the dragon does die, but the bite on Beowulf's neck quickly becomes inflamed. Turns out the dragon was venomous, and Beowulf does not have long to live. He shouts to Wiglaf to run down into the mound and scoop up some treasure so at least he knows that his death was fucking worth it. Wiglaf is gone for just a moment before coming back with an ass load of gold. With his last breath, Beowulf thanks God and passes away. His last words, quote, "Fate swept us away, sent my whole brave high-born clan to their final doom. Now I must follow them." With the news of Beowulf's death, fear quickly grows in Geatland. The Frisians, the Franks, and the Swedes are all going to make an attempt at taking over their country now that Beowulf won't be there to protect them. Though now only able to watch over their spirits, the people of Geatland burn Beowulf's body on a funeral pyre, rocked with armor, and bury his remains on a cliff overlooking their kingdom, so that he may keep an eye on all the ships that come to harbor. Quote, "They said that of all the kings upon the earth, he was the man most gracious and fair-minded, kindest to his people and keenest to win fame." The end.
Pause?
Sure.
I gotta pee.
Now to me, the biggest themes in Beowulf have to deal with two things: glory and one's own mortality. Starting with glory, there's a lot of ball flexing in this tale. After the fight with
can you flex balls?
Absolutely. Can you not flex your balls?
No, I totally can.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You've been working out your balls, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I'm flexing them right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's all you got?
They're getting so big.
They're not bulbous and kind of hurt when you touch them?
I mean, not as much as now.
After the fight with Grendel, the only reason Beowulf even has his dudes around is to just bear witness to him kicking ass. Like 2/3 of the adventures in this tale, he just tells them that he can do it alone. And of course, this ends up being his downfall in the long run, but he just wants people to see how fucking rad he is. And that was a big tradition in the Viking days. If you did something awesome, you'd get a bard singing the tale of you that very night. And the better the feat was, the longer people would sing that tale. Glory is all anyone cares about in this story. When they're swapping stories in the mead hall talking about like great warriors and shit. They're like, yeah, he died, but he took those motherfuckers down with him. And when you look at all the treasure that gets swapped around in the story, what do they do with it? Nothing. It's just souvenirs that tell people how cool your adventures were. All anyone wants is a record of the cool shit they did by the time they die. And this leads into the theme of morality. Beowulf is an old fucking man by the time he fights the dragon. And yet when he gets a vision from God telling him his time is up, he just can't fucking believe it. Regardless of all the bullshit he's done throughout his entire life, no one is ready to go when it's time. And this is a pretty common theme for any Viking story. It's like, yeah, great. You get to go to the great liquor store in the sky now, but the more battles you live through, the greater you're talked about in the afterlife as well as on Earth. You could be known as the guy who got killed by a dragon or the guy who killed the dragon. Looking into the history of Beowulf itself has been sketchy at best. Our best evidence shows it to be written probably sometime between the year 800 and the year 1100. But tracing the ownership of the poem before Lawrence Noel actually picked it up is impossible. Once the story made its way to the anthropology nerds, a lot of decorations on ancient Scandinavian relics started to make some fucking sense. There are scenes from Beowulf on the sides of ships and shields dating back to the year 700, but the lines kind of blur between when the story of Beowulf was first told. You see, before Beowulf was written, it was likely an oral legend, probably sung rather than told. Could be that Beowulf was inspired by these decorations on warships or the other way around. There's unfortunately no way to tell which came first. But it was also quickly pointed out that the tales of battle told in the mead hall in the first part of the story do hold some semblance of fact to them. There is a lot of embellishing in the tale, sure, but some of the people and battles they were name-dropping were ones archaeologists had found documents of, but could never place the date. Now they could narrow down when these battles took place within a span of a couple hundred years. They even managed to track down where Hrothgar's mead hall was probably based on, using clues in the story to find its location in the tale. It's in an area of Sweden called Lejra.
One more time. Come on, brother.
Ledra.
I thought this was like your blood or something.
Ledra. I'm not Swedish.
I'm going to take your word for it.
I'm not Swedish.
What the fuck are you again?
Norwegian.
White boy?
Yeah, pretty much. I come from the land of the ice and snow where we farm potato. Since the original...
Fucking Christ, that sucked. Oh my God.
Look, we weren't known for much, all right? It was like, oh, wow, you guys came from Norway. And it's like, yeah, but we weren't the ones like doing the pillaging. We were the ones getting pillaged. Like,
yeah.
We weren't cool.
Yeah.
Since the original translation of Beowulf in Latin went public in 1850, there were 8 other translations made in that very century alone. Because scholars quickly showed their friends just how fucking metal this story was, and it soon got passed around to all the academics. Since 1900, the translations made of Beowulf have gone into the hundreds. Some were faithful to the tale, while others tried to domesticate the poem by making the locations in the English towns and shit like they did with Don Quixote. As a matter of fact, J.R.R. Tolkien? Tolkien?
Who's that?
I don't know. Even tried translating Beowulf himself, but the notorious difficulty in translating it caused him to give up pretty quick. Regardless, Beowulf still became a huge influence in the creation of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The deep historical references that people would start spouting off in parts of Beowulf were a direct influence on Tolkien, who wanted that same feeling of history when writing stories of his own. The elfin language was even based on the Old Icelandic dialect.
Elven.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's with a V?
Yeah.
He's so gay.
Fucking elfin is Keeblers, all right? It's different.
They're the only elves I know.
Thank you, man. No. Elfin? No.
Elfin, I don't know.
No, that's fucked up. Don't say it like that.
I'm sorry. Jesus.
Elven.
I'm sorry I was racist towards a mythical race of creatures.
No, it's not racist. It's just incorrect.
Like, fucking
Wait,
elves,
that makes me
dwarves,
sound
or
bad.
Italians.
All right, never mind. Shit.
The difficulty in translating Beowulf is actually detailed by Tolkien's... It is Tolkien, right?
Tolkien.
Is it Tolkien?
I have no fucking idea.
Oh,
This
fuck,
is how
I
I
don't know.
say it.
All right.
Like, I don't know. It's fucking Tolkien.
It's actually detailed by Tolkien's 1940 essay, appropriately called On Translating Beowulf. Basically, you know that bullshit about Eskimos having 7 words for snow?
Oh my god, are we doing Tolkien soon?
Huh? A bit.
Oh, we're gonna have so much fun. Oh, it's gonna be so great.
Oh, are we doing Tolkien? No.
Oh.
No. I'm never
man.
reading those books. I don't like them.
Yeah, you know why? Because they're not good.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Basically, you know that bullshit about Eskimos having 7 words for snow? Well, that's actually kind of the case here with Old Icelandic. Not only was this particular dialect of Icelandic already dead by the time it was first transcribed 1,000 years ago by monks, but it was soon found that some of the words had double, triple, or quadruple meanings, and every definition would change each time it was used. For instance, the word Bjorn could mean warrior, or it could mean bear, but since the original writer of Beowulf was trying to be poetic, he used the word Bjorn to just mean man in general, but in the sense that he was like a bear-like man. You get it?
Yeah, no, I got it. It's cool.
In fact, there are 25 instances throughout the poem where a word is supposed to mean man, but the author uses another word instead that doesn't mean that. And that's the thing. It's believed that the tale was originally told through song, so it makes sense that it was trying to be poetic. But that's the issue, isn't it? You don't know exactly what the author means at any point, so a lot of it is actually up for interpretation. And trying to translate the poem with literal definitions has led to some very ugly translations. You could use the literal definition of swanrade to mean swan's riding, but that's confusion. It's hoity-toity way to say water. That's it. So because of this, arguably one of the worst translations is from 1957 by a guy named David Wright, who thought that having the work translated into a simplified fashion would sound good, but it didn't. It sounded like fucking trash. But arguably the best translation is the 1999 translation from Farrar, Straus and Giroux by Irish Nobel laureate Seamus Heaney, which he put so much work into that you could literally read along to the story with an ancient Anglo-Saxon beat like it was originally meant to. Like, he fucking went out and commissioned people to create a beat that he could kind of perform the poem to, and it would work. Isn't that great?
Oh man, we're in some deep
nerd shit.
Deep white people shit.
God,
right
I
here.
love it.
Oh my God.
It is fascinating. I love it. It won a ton of awards. The only issue to some critics, however, was that the translation came off sounding too Irish. This led... This led some...
The accent, though, man, I can't...
What was this part in here where Beowulf said, "What the feck?" Like, why?
I don't know. It sounds a bit too poor.
Bit too Irishy. This led some scholars to call Seamus Heaney's wolf Heaney Wolf, alluding that his translations are mostly made up, which I find unfair, because like I mentioned, you only know the general direction the story of Beowulf is trying to bring you, and that's it. As a matter of fact, you know that bastard that gives Beowulf Hrunting, the sword that breaks the first time? Fucking Unferth?
Yeah.
Well, whether or not Unferth knew this would happen is even up for debate, because the sentence that describes the sword breaking says, Weas forma Sith, which, as mentioned before, is in a dead dialect of Icelandic. So it could mean at last, like at last after so many battles Hrunting broke, or it could mean according to plan, like Unferth knew this would fucking happen. No one knows. Either way could have made sense. Unferth could have been a well-meaning guy, or completely set Beowulf up for failure. Still debated to this day.
No, I'm pretty fucking sure, like, set up for failure. I mean, cycles to failure, man.
But
like,
here's the thing. Beowulf also, like, showed him that he was a great warrior after all, and maybe that showed him, hey, I ought to hang out with the guy.
well,
You
yeah,
know,
I mean, regardless,
I don't know.
as far as, like, what he knew the sword would do, Like cycles to failure is
I don't-
a phrase that is used in my trade. That's a newer thing, but it's not a new concept.
Yeah, true.
Like,
But I mean, this tale could have been written by just people bullshitting and knew nothing about it.
no,
I don't know.
No, of course they fucking knew that. Like the longer you use something, like of course
breaks.
eventually it would fucking
Well,
buzz.
isn't that
like?
But when they tell them like, "Hey, we've been using this thing for centuries," wouldn't Beowulf have known and just been like, "No, thank you"?
Not if he was a dumbass.
Well, maybe Unferth was a dumbass. I don't know.
We've been using this thing for fucking centuries. Here, hand it over, and then it's just don't worry about it.
I can see it going either way. Well, and here's the thing too. Even his name, Unferth, has been debated as to its meaning all on its own. No name has ever been recorded that even sounds close to Unferth anywhere else in history. Just Beowulf. So people started thinking that maybe his name is actually a label. And depending completely on whether or not he planned for the sword to break, his name could mean soulful or unfriendly or jester, but we will never truly know. In linking this back to Lord of the Rings for a second, Wormtongue, advisor to King Theoden in Lord of the Rings, is based on Unferth. So it's clear which side of the argument Tolkien was on.
Yeah.
To me, oh, whoa, a dragon hoarding gold.
What do you want?
Whoa.
Why are you looking at me?
To me, the most interesting source of contention when it comes to translating Beowulf goes into the fact that the word describing Grendel's mother in Old Icelandic, dis, was sometimes the word used to address a Valkyrie. There is a possibility that Grendel's mother was a fallen Valkyrie. And if that was the case, it means Beowulf beheaded a literal angel so she wouldn't transport him to the afterlife, which would also lean into the theme of mortality, as we discussed before. Would also make it real fucking cool, too. Just like a disgraced Valkyrie and you chop off her fucking head. Fuck yeah. But it's not just the double and triple meanings that make Beowulf so hard to translate. Let's not forget that the entire fucking thing is handwritten. So the kerning between letters can unfortunately look like a whole other word or shit. Maybe it was always meant to be that way. It's difficult because it's difficulties such as these that had Tolkien say in his essay, quote, "One famous critic informed his public that Beowulf was only a small beer, yet if beer at all, it is a dark drink and bitter, a solemn funeral ale with the taste of death." Because he's dramatic. Now, as I'd mentioned before, there were two writers that worked on the manuscripts within the Noel Codex. One that started the tale and another that ended it. Both of these writers were probably working off of an older document anyway, and were just transcribing the story of Beowulf to newer pieces of paper. But the first guy was delicate in his writing. He made sure the words were legible, beautiful, and accurate. He wrote the first 1,939 lines of prose. The second guy who wrote the rest of the 1,243 lines was older, quicker, and clearly didn't give a shit. Lot more errors in his part than the first guy. He's the reason the second half is harder to translate than the first. But let's not forget that the scribes of this day and age were almost exclusively Christian monks. So while the story was being transcribed over who knows how many times, the original story itself could have been edited to adhere with some Christian values. Parts like Grendel being a direct descendant of Cain or Beowulf praying to God get brought into question. I bring this up because around the time that it's purported that Beowulf was written was the large-scale Christianization of the Anglo-Saxons and Danes across Europe. But believe it or not, converting people to Christianity back then actually had a pretty good success rate. A lot of people bring it up like, oh, they're doing it against their will, and like, of course they were and shit, but at the same time, like, a lot of people were just like, yeah, I'm into new ideas, and just fucking went with it anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that some monk overwrote parts of Beowulf, but perhaps the original author made it this way because he himself was converted. Could have been. Like the rest of the story, we just don't know. In 1939, widowed millionaire Edith Pretty began an interest in spiritualism due to her husband's shut up. I've been drinking.
Do you want to start that over?
In 1939,
should we notate that?
I can. Don't worry about it.
58 minutes.
I can only feel part of my tongue.
Hang
on.
Seconds.
Let me take a drink and I'll be fine.
All right. Yeah, that'll help. Usually does.
Steadies the shakes. In 1939, widowed millionaire Edith Pretty began an interest in spiritualism due to her husband's recent death from cancer. Fuck. There we are. Well,
her interest in the afterlife led her to become an amateur archaeologist in her spare time. Because remember, it's 1939. British people are still very much into Egypt right now, and death is a huge part of that culture. Now, Edith had a quite bit of property.
I thought the title was a joke, but goddamn,
it was hard. There was pressure.
I was finally
it was rough.
Okay,
fine. Start it over.
I was like, God damn, I finally get a chance to like fucking sit back and take a drink. He can take over the last page. I'm like, oh, God damn it.
I'm having. Don't you? All right, let's go.
Me hurt. Brain hurt.
Yeah. That's how it
Edith Pretty. Her interest in the afterlife led her to become an amateur archaeologist in her spare time. Because remember, it's 1939. British people are still very much into Egypt right now. I want everyone to know
that I was genuinely trying there.
Oh, you ought to see that motherfucker go through P.D. Eastman. Just, are you my mother? Although I have to... Oh, that hits home, doesn't it? British people are still very much into Egypt right now in 1939, and death is a huge part of that culture. Now Edith has quite a bit of property. It was called Sutton Hoo on the southeast tip of England, and it went on for miles. There were 18 hills on her land that were always suspected to be Viking burial mounds, but was never confirmed. However, with her new hobby for archaeology, she called on Vincent B. Redstone, a member of the Suffolk Institute of Archaeology, for assistance. That summer, they picked a mound and started digging, only to find an absolute shitload of well-preserved treasure. But Edith didn't care about the money. She already had a ton of property, so she ended up donating everything they found to the British Museum. From there, Edith and Vincent Redstone quickly unearthed an entire Viking longship, one of the most well-preserved in history. And as they excavated more and more mounds, all they found was more treasure. Unfortunately, Edith died only 3 years after the excavation started. She was only like 59. But to this day, they're still digging shit out of the fucking ground at her property. One of the more interesting finds at Sutton Hoo is called, creatively, the Sutton Hoo helmet. Can you guess what it is?
Is it a helmet?
It's a boot.
No.
It's believed to have belonged to a Viking king named Raedwald, who supposedly was a contemporary to whoever first composed the Beowulf tale. The reason behind this assumption is because, as mentioned in Beowulf, his helmet is adorned with boars, described just like in the story. Now, either the writer of Beowulf was inspired by Raedwald.
Inspired.
Shut up. The spiders scare me. Was inspired by Raedwald.
All right, I'm sorry, listeners. We're almost done. This. We're very drunk. I'm sorry.
We're going to finish.
We're sorry.
When we finish this, we're finishing that pack. So either the writer of Beowulf was inspired by Raedwald and mentioned his helmet design in the poem, or Raedwald was inspired by Beowulf and adorned his helmet based on the style told about in the story. Because remember, this dude got buried off the coast of England with his fucking helmet. Once it's buried, it was gone. If you didn't get a look at it while Raedwald was alive, that's it. It's a hell of a fucking coincidence if they had nothing to do with each other. And by the way, it's a cool fucking helmet. It's got like this metal beard and everything, like chainmail fucking beard hanging off the ends of it. It's sick.
Well, it's
cool. It's cool as shit. Yeah, it's not needed, but it's neat.
No. That's just kind of like what they did.
I never seen it before. I
saw that picture. Like, you had the helmet, you had the shit covering your head, and then like you had the stitching bits that went above, connected the chainmail, and then that went under your nose. They had like the nasal bit. Yeah.
You've researched armor a far bit more than I have.
Yeah.
So fucking geek.
Yeah. That was like a normal thing.
Yeah, that's a thing that normal teens do. Anyway, although the tale of Beowulf has been performed on stage over the millennia, it shall perhaps be forever immortalized as this strange 2007 Robert Zemeckis CGI movie where, like, Angelina Jolie kind of shows her ass, but not really because it's CGI. It wasn't very good. 15 years it's been.
Well, I mean, if anything, it was better than reality. Like,
Of what? Really seeing her butt?
I mean, yeah. I mean,
I guess. I mean, it's CGI'd, so it's not like there's any
it's going to be
flaws in
some
it.
weird perfect thing, like the same way like
Yeah.
Playboy is like weird
With the weird airbrush skin. Oh,
exactly.
It's so creepy.
You know, it's not actual booty though. It's
Real women don't have folds in their skin. It's disgusting.
absolutely not. Gross.
Anyway, Beowulf has been steadily translated in around 40 languages for the last 200 years, coming out to almost 700 different translations. It is easily one of the most translated tales on the planet and the most famous Viking tale today. My sources today: Beowulf, translated by Seamus Heaney, Farrar, Straus, and Garreau, 2001, and Wikipedia. Come from the land of the ice and snow with the midnight sun.
Nope. Don't like
cheers
it.
to the Vikings.
I don't have a beer to cheer you with, man.
Oh, you are out.
Yeah, no.
Pick up a new one. Oh,
no
and you
way.
don't drink Hawaiian beer, which is weird.
Dude,
Possibly
it
racist.
doesn't taste good. It doesn't taste good.
Mm.
Okay? Any beer that has that marketing upon it, there's a strange, sweet tinge to it that is not good. I do not like
I just like the Kahlua pork flavor that they have in their beer. I want to go watch a Jason movie.